Driving while intoxicated, understand the facts about drugs and alcohol. Without a doubt, the biggest danger that American drivers confront today is drunk driving. As we have learned in this course's earlier modules, defensive driving calls for sharp motor skills and mental agility. A driver's ability to think clearly, move precisely, or see the environment around their car is reduced when they are under the influence of alcohol, drugs, weariness, or illness. They are consequently much more prone to commit a grave error that causes a traffic collision. This section examines the two common and harmful factors that contribute to impaired driving: alcohol and drugs. You will discover how these chemicals affect your body and how this ultimately compromises your capacity for safe driving. We also go over the laws governing driving while intoxicated and the possible repercussions on both the individual and the legal levels. As a young learner driver, you are more vulnerable to the consequences of driver impairment than more experienced drivers, so alcohol and drug awareness must be a major component of your driver's education curriculum. Additionally, the majority of adolescents and young people are eventually exposed to alcohol and drug use through their friends and wider social network. As a result, you might be tempted to experiment with these drugs yourself. You can safeguard yourself from the following by being aware of how alcohol and drugs will impact your physical, mental, and emotional state. It is against the law to drive under the influence of alcohol if you are under 21. Alcohol can damage your ability to drive without having to make you completely inebriated. Even one drink of alcohol can have a significant impact on your mental state, slowing your reaction time and increasing your propensity for risky behavior. Due to their inexperience behind the wheel and limited tolerance for alcohol, teen drivers are especially vulnerable to this effect. You must follow the law and refuse to use alcohol and illegal substances as a responsible young adult. Don't drive if you decide to use alcohol or drugs. It's easy to abide by these guidelines. If you violate them, you risk losing your driving privileges or, worse perhaps, your life. Alcohol consumption while driving. Alcohol is a harmful and intoxicating drug. It will affect how your mind functions and make it difficult for you to control your own body, let alone a car. Unfortunately, alcohol use is accepted as normal in society. Alcohol is portrayed as being generally safe, common, and even good in daily life. Our perceptions about alcohol are gradually evolving. Fewer individuals are opting to consume alcohol, and stricter rules enable federal and state governments to crack down on alcohol abuse and alcohol-related crimes like drunken driving, DUI. Despite these advancements, it is still believed that alcohol is to blame for about 1/3 of all traffic-related fatalities in the U.S. You or someone you care about could easily become a statistic if you decide to drink and drive or hang out with those who do. What rules apply to DUI right now? Driving while intoxicated is illegal in all 50 states and the District of Columbia, and those who do so face harsh penalties. Underage drivers are not allowed to have any alcohol in their systems, but in most states, adults are allowed to drive with a permissible blood alcohol content of up to 0.08%. In our modules on BAC and DUI regulations, you may learn how to determine your blood alcohol concentration, BAC, as well as what this number actually means in terms of actual alcohol intake. What level of alcohol is safe? It's crucial to realize that safe and legal are two different concepts. Almost all states allow adults over 21 to drive while having a blood alcohol level of 0.03%, 0.05%, or even 0.07%. Without a doubt, alcohol consumption can cause drunkenness and impairment as early as 0.02% or 0.01%. Alcohol begins to enter your bloodstream through mouth blood vessels the instant you take your first sip of an alcoholic beverage, traveling through your body to your brain. Alcohol can change cognition and slow down physical functioning in a variety of subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, ways in this situation. Even trace levels of alcohol can have a strong chemical effect on the brain. Our Driving While Intoxicated module details the precise mechanisms underlying absorption of alcohol, how you get drunk, and alcohol abstinence, how alcohol is expelled from your body and how long this will take on average. Driving While Intoxicated, understand the facts about drugs and alcohol, Part 2. The results of alcohol consumption. From individual to person, alcohol intoxication has slightly different short-term effects. Most people feel good, euphoric, or joyful relatively shortly after beginning to drink. As you drink more, your mood will continue to be altered, but the outcome will be uncertain. A person under the influence of alcohol can feel joy and exhilaration just as easily as they might feel hatred, despair, and suicidal thoughts. Following the onset of alcohol's interference with brain-body signaling, you will feel distorted vision, unsteady speech, having poor motor coordination, bad motor control, reduced memory, mental haziness. As you get more drunk, these effects of alcohol on your ability to drive will get worse. If you keep drinking, you'll probably throw up and lose consciousness. At this stage of inebriation, alcohol poisoning is possible. The consequences of alcohol consumption over time. While the short-term impacts of alcohol intake will be the primary focus of any discussion of driving under the influence, we cannot disregard the long-term health effects of habitual drinking. Alcohol is a poison that can slowly but surely damage all of your body's essential organs and systems. The most vulnerable organ is your liver, since it actively removes alcohol from the bloodstream. Liver cells eventually start to wither and die when they are made to work too hard or for too long. In our comprehensive module on this subject, you may read in detail about the negative effects of alcohol misuse on your health. For now, just be aware that continued, frequent drinking can lead to liver failure and cirrhosis, heart condition, stroke, persistent stomach problems, permanent harm to the brain. Additionally, alcohol abuse can result in both physical and mental dependence. Even though they are aware that it is steadily destroying their health and killing them, an alcoholic would continue to use alcohol. The intoxicated driver. Alcohol has an impact on the nerve and cell network that the body uses to communicate. When this system is down, messages are delayed, distorted, or completely lost. The result is a breakdown of typical bodily processes and functions on a systemic level. Your senses, cognitive abilities, and bodily motions will all be affected by alcohol intoxication. You wouldn't be able to drive if you had even one of these disabilities. When combined, they severely impair driving ability. 1. A sensory deficit. You cannot develop a complete and accurate picture of what is happening around your car while your senses are compromised. 2. Impairment of cognition. You are unable to choose suitable responses to changes in the driving environment when your cognition is compromised. 3. Physical disability. You cannot perform routine driving actions as quickly or smoothly as you would normally be able to when your motions are impeded. Alcohol-impaired drivers frequently operate their vehicles at unsafe speeds, struggle to maintain a proper lane position, leave insufficient space surrounding the car, ignore traffic signs, and fail to interact with other road users. The effects of alcohol on personality. Alcohol's capacity to change a drinker's personality and emotional state is one of its most hazardous consequences. A DUI offender would likely say no if you ask them whether they intended to drink and drive. Most people are aware of the risks associated with drunk driving and would never consider doing so. Unfortunately, because alcohol affects judgment, a drunk person is more likely to make decisions that are substantially different from those of a sober person. If you have the opportunity to drive and you think you can get away with it while intoxicated, you might decide to do so. Alcohol use causes people to be more willing to take chances, be more likely to exaggerate threat, be less concerned with unfavorable outcomes, and be less conscious of their own physical and psychological state. Alcohol can also cause emotional distortion and harmful, heightened emotional states. Your actions on the road are likely to enhance the likelihood of an accident or collision occurring if you were to drive while feeling melancholy, extremely excited, or furious. Keep in mind that any substance that alters your mood will also alter how you drive. Driving while intoxicated. Understand the facts about drugs and alcohol. Part 3. Drug driving is prohibited. The following section in this video discusses drug driving, which many people engage in without recognizing it. The term drug can be used to describe drugs that are prohibited, such as cocaine and marijuana. Medically necessary medicines that are legal, such as painkillers and antidepressants. other compounds that influence the mind but that we do not necessarily classify as drugs, such as nicotine or coffee. You are driving under the influence of drugs if you smoke before you get behind the wheel, drink coffee while you're driving, or take daily allergy medication. However, unless the substance you are taking has produced mental or physical impairment, you are not driving while intoxicated in a legal sense. This complicated subject will be covered in detail later. All you need to know right now is that if you are driving recklessly and later test positive for any potentially intoxicating substance, including over-the-counter medications, you may be found guilty of DUI. Punishments for drug abuse and DUI. If you are caught driving while intoxicated by drugs, you could face DUI or DWI charges depending on the state where the offense was done. Drug-impaired driving is typically punished just as severely as drunk driving. While it may not seem fair, state laws generally do not distinguish between drug-impaired driving caused by illicit or abused substances and accidental impairment, where a person has accidentally damaged their driving ability by taking prescription medication. When taking any medicine, keep this in mind and make sure you check yourself for indications of impairment before operating a vehicle. The important lesson to learn from this video's section is that all drugs have the potential to be harmful and impair users. If you are caught driving while intoxicated, you may potentially face other drug charges if the drug you used was prohibited or you were using it in an illegal manner. The Controlled Substances Act's schedule of the drug will play a role in the punishment, which varies widely across the country. Regulation of Substances Act. A drug will be placed in one of the 5 schedules on the Restricted Substances Act if there are regulations governing how, when, and under what circumstances it can be manufactured, sold, or used, as is the case with the majority of recreational drugs and medicinal medications. You can get a general understanding of a drug's ability to harm you and the likely legal repercussions of abusing it by knowing where it falls on the scale of the Substance Act. In a subsequent, specific topic, you can learn more about controlled substances law and scheduling medications. When used in sufficient amounts, all controlled substances carry the risk of overdose and other health issues. Despite being widely accessible, unscheduled medications, including caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol, have the same effects as those that are scheduled. All medicines have the potential to damage your ability to drive. Keep in mind that any substance that affects how your body and brain work will also affect how you drive. Depending on the substance you used, you may experience specific impairments. Drugs and impaired driving. Do you understand the distinctions between hallucinogenic, depressant, and stimulant drugs? The majority of drugs can be categorized as either stimulants, depressants, or hallucinogens based on their primary biological activity, even if each drug induces a different chemical reaction in the body that results in a different impact. First, stimulants. Drugs that act as stimulants, such as cocaine, Adderall, methamphetamine, and MDMA, speed up body functions. When driving, this impact frequently leads to speeding, tailgating, aggressive behavior, and disobeying traffic laws. 2. Sedatives. Drugs that are depressants, such as heroin, oxycodone, Xanax, and Nembutal, have the opposite effect. These substances can cause drowsy driving, sloppy maneuvering, poor space management, and a failure to obey traffic control devices by slowing down body functions. 3. Hallucinogens. Any of the aforementioned effects, as well as hallucinations, can be brought on by hallucinogenic substances like marijuana, LSD, psilocybin mushrooms, and dextromethorphan. A broad variety of risky and irregular actions might result from seeing or feeling things that are not real while operating a vehicle. The drug driving videos thoroughly examines the mental and physical consequences of typical stimulants, depressants, and hallucinogens. We also examine in detail how these impacts result in impaired driving and elevated danger on the road. Driving while intoxicated, understand the facts about drugs and alcohol, Part 4. Threats posed by inhalants. Younger kids are especially prone to this ubiquitous and extremely deadly kind of drug misuse, which involves inhaling the fumes from goods like glue, paint thinner, body sprays, and other similar ones that weren't intended for human consumption. These items' ingredients have the power to instantly kill you or send you into convulsions of pleasure and laughter. Abusing inhalants can seriously and unpredictably affect your ability to drive. Learn more about the risks associated with inhalants in our dedicated section. Combining alcohol and drugs. Each year, drug-alcohol combinations cause hundreds of avoidable fatalities across the country. Sometimes the chemical interaction of 2 or more intoxicants is sufficient to result in overdose death. Others lose their lives in fatal car accidents because the driver was unaware that combining alcohol and a substance would significantly affect their ability to drive. Depending on the sorts of substances involved, the precise effects of mixing alcohol with a drug, or a drug with another drug, will vary. The liver will have 2 interacting substances to filter out of the bloodstream, which puts a tremendous amount of stress on the body and prolongs intoxication when alcohol and drugs are combined. Even if we're simply talking about a glass of wine along with your typical prescription pain medicine, drinking while taking pharmaceuticals is frequently incredibly hazardous to your health. Many drivers are unaware that even very tiny amounts of alcohol, when mixed with certain substances, including prescription and over-the-counter medications, can cause serious mental and physical impairment. Even if your blood alcohol content, BAC, is below the legal limit and the medicine you took was prescribed to you by a doctor, you will probably be charged with driving under the influence if a law enforcement officer stops you and observes that your driving is clearly affected. Despite the fact that the substance you used was legal, driving while under the influence is still prohibited. Driving while intoxicated in the United States. Although it is challenging to evaluate the effects of drunk and drug driving in the U.S., we do know that it costs the nation billions of dollars and claims hundreds of innocent lives every year. Around 10,000 fatal road accidents each year are related to alcohol intoxication. Illegal or prescribed narcotics were also a contributing element in a large number of these collisions. It is challenging to estimate the exact human cost of drug driving because many intoxicants cannot be detected outside of a laboratory. Many fatal traffic accidents that don't involve alcohol almost certainly involve a driver who is affected by an unnoticed drug. Punishments for driving while intoxicated. You may face legal repercussions if you refuse to allow a police officer to test your blood alcohol content during a routine traffic check due to implied consent regulations. A fine and a license suspension are almost probably part of your punishments if you are found guilty of driving under the influence or driving while inebriated. Another potential result of a DUI conviction is a prison sentence, though this punishment is normally reserved for serious DUI offenses and repeat offenses. The following convictions for driving while intoxicated or under the influence of drugs: serving the community, taking part in a program to raise awareness about alcohol, limited ability to drive, whereby your vehicle may only be used for certain purposes, or with an ignition interlock device. Regulations relating to alcohol. You need to be aware of other alcohol-related crimes besides driving under the influence. It is also illegal in several states too. Have alcohol in a car with an open container. If you're underage, you cannot consume alcohol in a pub. Give alcohol to a person who is under 21 years old. If you are under 21 and try to buy booze, lie about your age. Similar to drunk driving, different states have different punishments for breaching these rules. In the majority of the states where these laws are in effect, there are additional exceptions. Impaired driving, rules, fines and consequences, and your driver's education manual have more information on relevant alcohol laws. Driving while intoxicated, understand the facts about drugs and alcohol, Part 5. Laws governing teen drivers. If a person under the age of 21 is caught driving while inebriated, they will likely also be prosecuted with alcohol possession and consumption. Many states allow this even if you don't have any alcohol on you or in the car, since you still possess the alcohol that is in your blood. Young drivers must keep in mind that the legal BAC limit for adults does not apply to those under the age of 21. If you are detected operating a vehicle when underage and have any detectable amount of alcohol in your blood, you will be convicted of driving under the influence. Simply taking too much cough medicine, or accidentally ingesting mouthwash could result in a DUI conviction. Every state approaches limiting teen drinking and penalizing minor DUI offenders slightly differently. To be on the right side of the law, make sure you read everything carefully. you can be sure that teenage drinking and DUI charges will be dealt with quickly and harshly no matter where you live in the United States. Teenage drunken driving is still a major concern, but it is less common than it was 10 or 20 years ago. Due in large part to stricter alcohol laws, young drivers may be less likely than adult drivers to engage in drunk driving, but if they do, they still have a much higher risk of dying in an accident. Adverse effects of intoxicated driving. Driving while intoxicated by alcohol or drugs has many potential negative outcomes beyond being hurt, killed, or arrested. A driver's life can be radically changed by being involved in a drunk driving accident, and it is never for the better. If you are stopped and found guilty of DUI, the consequences of your behavior will follow you around for a very long time. This frequently entails rejected applications for jobs and colleges, massive financial cost, lawyers, fines, property damage, court costs, social issues, lost friendships, being treated differently by your family and the wider community, behavioral health issues, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, lost the ability to drive. You have a lot to lose if you drive while intoxicated, but you have nothing to gain by doing so. Thankfully, there is a wonderfully easy way to shield oneself from these terrible repercussions: never drink and drive. Preventing drunk driving. You wouldn't try to drive when you had a broken limb or were terribly sleep deprived, and you should have the same zero-tolerance policy when it comes to driving while under the influence of drugs or alcohol. There are always alternatives to drinking and driving, so nobody is forced to do it. Planning beforehand is essential if you want to stay sober and avoid driving to an event that may entail alcohol. Never give your car keys to an intoxicated person. Instead, designate a sober driver, hire a cab, or stay the night at a friend's place, especially if you are the drunk person. As you'll see throughout this video, drugs and alcohol can skew a person's judgment to the point where they make careless decisions, such as driving themselves home after drinking. There is a cause for the frequent regret that follows a night of drinking. You are not the same person when you use drugs or alcohol. You are not the same person when you are sober. The only decision that is completely safe when it comes to consuming alcohol is not to drink at all.